Hello and welcome to a brief guide on regional tactics and Rome Total Realism Imperium Surrectum version 0.6. Now, what do I mean when I say regional tactics? Some of this will be general game advice, but a lot of it is going to be specifically a guide as to area of recruitment units, where to find them, which ones feel the most relevant to me, and I will include a disclaimer here. I haven't conquered the whole known world. If it turns out Illyrian skirmishers are absolutely nuts, I don't know about that. If it turns out you can get horse archers here and you don't have to go all the way to here, they're more relevant than I think they are, stuff like that. So if anyone in the comments wants to talk about area recruitment units, I would love to hear it, and I will correlate all of that information into a pinned comment at the top for anyone else who has more curiosity on the subject. But it's not going to be just area recruitment units, because I think one of the most important things that I learned in my Achaean campaign that I'm currently uploading to the channel is just how insanely effective the fort wall strategy is. As you can see right here, a war with the Antigonids could have been very hard, but they can't reach me. They certainly have the armies to wreck me badly, but fort walling choke points is one of the most important things in the game in general for controlling how and when you get to start the fights. Eventually I would have to deal with these armies in this campaign, but I don't have to do it now. I can steal land hand over fist from them and then deal with their armies later when I have to. With more armies, more experience on those armies, more stars on those generals, more money funding them, and less on the line than if I were to fight them in front of the city for everything, having gained nothing yet. Now, because this video is specifically about Greece, I bring up fort walling so early because there are so many choke points throughout Greece, so many rivers, so many mountain passes. There are rarely locations like this where it requires 2 forts to create the wall. In almost every location, it's just 1 fort, maybe 2 if you're unlucky. So my number 1 bit of regional advice when it comes to Greece is divide and conquer. Use fort walls. Pick off small factions just because you can, and do it quickly before anyone else has time to dogpile you. With a faction like the Messene or Elis, those are wars that can be done in 1 or 2 turns. There should be no risk of getting dogpiled by them because you can kill them before that happens. And I would say the only exception to that general bit of advice involving killing small factions quickly is specifically as Epirus. As Epirus, you start off with a big stack that can fight the Antigonids at war with the Antigonids, and the people beneath you are a buffer state to an allied faction. Epirus is the only faction in all of mainland Greece that has any reason to go for the Antigonids right off the bat. I would say there's also an argument for Athens just because, you know, they're next to you, you're gonna have to fight them no matter what. I would still go for the Boeotians first, and with Sparta, you would go for the Antigonids, but that's because of something very important that happens here. You don't need to load a start of game save to show off, but you can see the Greek city-states are still here, and I guess this will get into part number 2 of this regional advice guide. The Greek city-states are your friends, and you need to be sure the Greek city-states are your friends, because if we come over to the faction summary and we go over to, are they in the top 5? I imagine they are. They don't quite make it. But if we turn on living factions, you can barely see their line when it intersects with the Antigonids. They're one of the strongest factions in the game because they're all over the place. There'll be 3 cities right here. It starts with 2 stacks next to it. Then they have more up here, more right here. They're all over the map. Declaring war on the Greek city-state should come later in your campaign. At the start, even if they're not your ally, as long as you're not actively transgressing and provoking them, at least that's how it feels in my first campaign where they never attacked me, they're basically just an organized rebel faction. It's why they're so disjointed across the map. That's their function. They're intended to be peaceful. I've heard you can actually ally with them and peacefully acquire settlements from them for money if you foster good relations from them. But what I have experienced is just very straightforward, and you can see it here. Nobody's moving through the Peloponnese easily. You can use these as pre-built fort walls. You can say, as Sparta, if I declare war for this against the Antigonids, they can't get to me. They can't do anything about it. Because there's going to be the Greek city-states up here physically blocking troop movement down. They're not going to be able to get to you. So a big part of going to war with the Antigonids, whenever it eventually happens, and going to war with anyone, is understanding just how restricted movement is by all the rebels and all the Greek city-states. And especially with long-term fear of the Antigonids specifically, you have a lot of leeway because of just how hard it is for them to get to you. And this is all being shown on the end save for my Achaean campaign, and you can really clearly see me using a lot of that to great effect, even as early as the 3rd episode, where I'll be fort walling Epirus and being oh, I can't get past them, but that's actually all right because it means other people can't get to me. because Scion is rebels and this is a wall here. Essentially, anything on the western half of the Peloponnese could be an enemy to you, but everything past that, you're the aggressor, never the defender, and it's important to understand that. A slight thing I want to add in addition to just generally fort walling is being willing to just like get stupid with it and dive into enemy lands. I built these forts before I owned this settlement. This was unticketed land when I did it. I had spies constantly moving around in their land, saw their stacks move up here, and immediately just ran a general past my previous fort wall, which was here, I think. Yeah, previously I had a fort wall here. I saw that I could divide them up by dropping a new fort wall, get access to Larissa in this general region, and took that opportunity. Fort walls are not strictly defensive. You can use them very proactively. I think that's the most important 3 things geopolitically when you start a Greece campaign. Number 1 is to use forts defensively and offensively constantly. There is no shortage of natural choke points, and not making use of them results in an infinitely harder campaign where instead of controlling what fight is happening, you will be thrown up against absolutely monstrous stuff. And by the way, if you're looking at this and you're like, holy shit, what's happening in 0.6? This save is on very hard with extreme mode enabled. So it's probably not this bad on a normal campaign, but even if I had all of my armies perfectly grouped up to fight it, I'd still lose head to head. Divide and conquer is critically important. Number 2 goes hand in hand with that. The Greek city-states should be your friends. If nothing else, they should be your trading partners and your enemies' obstacles. And number 3 is simple. If you have a border with someone, they hate you. If you're the Achaeans and you start off bordering Elis, you're gonna need to kill Elis. Same with Messene, same with Sparta, same with everyone eventually. Rome Total War AI doesn't really like diplomacy, so if you're gonna be enemies with the small factions anyway, it's better to kill them early before they become a threat and get their land quickly and easily compared to the much harder wars that are down the line. Now, in terms of actually planning where you're going to go on your wars, there are 2 ways to look at it. And first and foremost, I'll just say this, it's true on every single faction, it's not unique to Greece. Are there any rebels left around? The Greek city-states have been conquering the starting rebels. I specifically conquered this one on the way back to retrain my army because it interferes with retraining as Achaea if you've taken this region. Here's one, yeah. If you look at this rebel stack, it's actually pretty serious. They have a decent number of units in here. Generally speaking, rebels are more well guarded than any normal faction. So as a result, you don't want to go after rebels. There are 2 reasons for this. 1, like I just said, it's harder to take on a rebel settlement than a normal faction settlement. But number 2, slightly less obvious, but just as important, is whenever you conquer a city, your faction gets stronger. And it's going to be basically the same amount, whether it's a rebel city or a rival city. The thing is that strength in a vacuum means absolutely nothing. By taking a city from your enemy, you reduce the relative strength of the people you're up against and make the comparative jump you're getting that much more important. If you beat the Antagonids in a war and take all of their land, they're reduced to 10 settlements, you're up to like 50, you've won the war. But if you don't fight the Antagonids, you go south, you island hop, you get up to 50 settlements yourself, and the Antagonids haven't been touched. They've been conquering while you've been doing this. They're up to 65 settlements now. There's still a massive war in front of you. That's why it's important to avoid going to war with rebels in the Greek city-states so much. You need to be taking land away from the people that are actually a threat to you. Don't invest more resources for less gain going after rebels or the Greek city-states. Now, what I was going to say before I got off into that tangent is I want to spend the rest of this episode talking about area of recruitment. And for those of you who are new to the idea and didn't play the original Rome Total Realism, area of recruitment is a system in 0.6 where coming to this building chain here, the military recruiting building, this is how you get your units. You're probably familiar with this part of it. And you'll need, say on Achaean Recruitment 1, you'll be able to highlight all of these units and see what you need for them. If you can already build them, then obviously you don't need anything else. This requires Barracks 1, and then the rest of them will tell you need first tier stables or first tier practice range. If you go to the next tier, it'll then show you more advanced units like the Achaean hoplites requiring a second tier barracks, so on and so forth. But you'll notice there are guys with this little icon right here. This icon means that it's an area of recruitment unit. You are not getting this unit for playing as, in this case, the Achaean League. Anyone who owns this settlement can recruit 304 here. It's just part of the region. I don't intend this to be a full guide to the mechanics of area recruitment, but I will mention at tier 4, the region is fully converted to your local culture and the original cultural units vanish from the region. So when we're talking about AOR units, if you really care about them, you probably stop at recruitment tier 3, where they're still available and you have access to the absolute best the region has. But you'll notice this place only has the 304. There's not actually that much of interest here, and that's not always the case. There are certain settlements and certain cultural regions that have much more to offer, and I find that planning your wars around what you can get by conquering certain regions to be important. So as the Achaean League as an example, you look at your roster, you'll see that your Achaean Slingers are all right. They're not incredible. And if you look around, you don't really find better alternatives, because honestly, what I was doing in my campaign of recruiting these guys wasn't really necessary, because they're about on par with the Achaean Slingers. But this is an air recruitment unit. If you were playing Epirus up here and you came down, that would be a reason to come down, is to get the Acarnanian Slingers, because these guys will be notably better than any other missile troop option you have. The Aetolian Slingers next door in Thurman are worse, but still better than what you start with access to, and recruiting 2 units at a time is better than 1 at a time, so you'll still want both of them probably. And it's worth planning your armies like that. Now, I don't know exactly which cities fall into which regions is part of the problem. Like, it gun to my head, which one does Stratos have? I think that Stratos has Acarnanian Slingers. Yes. But I don't fully know the details, like I said in the disclaimer at the start, of which units are where. This is a general guide based on what I currently understand. And I want to mention what I view as actually something of a trap. This is definitely relevant for late game campaigns and for people who view themselves as tall players. I would say that I'm the epitome of a wide player, somebody who blitzes, and I think the best economy investment you can make is to invest in conquering land from your rivals. I look at the cost of building a tier 3 market and the cost of building an army, and I'm like, I can conquer a lot of tier 1 markets with that army. So I'm thoroughly in the camp of believing that you don't always just want to build up and build more power. A lot of the time, the correct thing to do is just to go to war more. Build more armies, conquer more. So for me, I actually view it as something of a trap thing when you see something like the Thessalian Cavalry. I was showing the unit card a second ago. It's available at tier 3 recruitment with the tier 4 stables. It's a very good unit. It's gonna take you a long time to unlock this. Even once you conquer the land in Thessaly and you get access to this unit's area, getting all the buildings for it alone is gonna take you like 40 turns in every region that's doing it. And realistically, it'll probably be interrupted at some point by something such as happiness problems or city growth. It's going to take a very long time to get these guys in your army. However, if you're not like me, if you're not blitzing, if you're playing slowly, you should be going for the Thessalian Cavalry, because that's a playstyle thing, right? There are going to be people who don't derive joy from playing the game like this. I think I'm on turn, what is it, 30? Turn 15, and I think this is half of reality, so I think I'm on turn 30. And I'm at 45 settlements. I've conquered about 1.5 cities a turn this campaign. And there are people who would not enjoy this playstyle at all. They want to build up their cities. To those people, single-handedly, the most notable unit in AOR anywhere in Greece is probably the Thessalian Cavalry. This is not just a regional variant of cavalry that's pretty good and comparable to normal troops. For most factions, this is directly better than anything you get. It's comparable, I think, to the best non-cataphract cavalry in any roster, if I'm correct. I might be slightly hyperbolizing how good they are, but they are incredible. They are one of the few units where I look at them and think, man, if I thought I'd be recording for another 30 episodes, I'd be going for that. Now, I will say there are other AOR units that are good. I've heard there's some pretty solid infantry somewhere in this region. I don't exactly know where it was. And obviously, if you're willing to go across the Black Sea and start conquering this, you get access to horse archers and cataphracts as regional units, which are absolutely incredible. If you want to set up a colony somewhere on the map to recruit the best units from AOR, it's probably right here. This area's got insane AOR units. I'll load a save and show you in a second. But it's gonna be hard to get there because, as you'll notice looking at this, you physically can't get through here if you don't control the ports. And you won't, obviously, if you're going there just to get the units. So you'll have to do something very awkward, like land here, walk all the way up, or land here, go here, conquer a guy, build a port, build a boat, leave. It'll be hard to do that, but I think it's the sort of thing that's interesting and worth noting. But I won't be covering it in any great amount of detail because it's sort of outside the scope of talking about Greece, unlike the Mediterranean islands of note. And actually, as I'm about to show Rhodes, I should mention the statue of Zeus at Olympia and the wonders available to you should drive your gameplay. Plus, for a bonus, the population loyalty means every single city is 20% happier. That's just directly what it means. And that's huge. That just directly translates to money in every city. That's almost always... So a tax level is going to be somewhere between 20% and 35% happiness, depending on variables I don't fully understand. So generally speaking, like every other city will gain a tax level from having this. It's a ton of money. You would love to get this immediately. Additionally, it's at its best when it's not giving you any money, when you're able to keep something happy with almost no investment at low taxes. And this is the reason why. Otherwise, it would be at 55 or 60% happiness, rioting, maybe rebelling. Getting the Statue of Zeus early on is really, really valuable, and there's another good reason to go for it. The people who start with it, Ellis, are a 2-city faction. Their starting city doesn't have a wall, and on the subject of AOR units, there are, I think, no other hoplites in the game. I think Rhodes has close to this, but the Alien hoplites are 43 defense, 17 morale, and 13 attack. They are extremely good. They are, I think, the best hoplite I have seen. Certainly the best regional hoplite I have seen. As you might imagine, they take 3rd tier recruitment and 3rd tier barracks. It's going to take you a while to get to them, but if you're going to invest in regional troops, this is the sort of thing that really makes a case for doing it. Because when a unit is this much better than the default, it's worth having more difficulty retraining it. And to compare it to the default real quick, 17, 13, 43, coming over to a region with some generic hoplites. This is the generic Greek hoplite available in most Greek regions. 14 morale, 10 melee attack, 36 defense. Just very substantially worse than what you can get at Ellis. Anyway, let's load up a save as Rhodes and talk about what you can get as Rhodes before loading up a save as the Ptolemies and talking about Crete. So I know I said I'd be showing up as Rhodes, but fun fact, if you have a regional unit in your normal roster, you don't actually see it. So I had to switch over to the Ptolemies and conquer Rhodes so I could show this to you. But coming over to the island of Rhodes, there are 2 cities here. Possibly more importantly than the cities, it's kind of a big deal, is the Colossus of Rhodes itself increasing naval trade by 40%, which just like the Statue of Zeus is a fairly massive economic boon. Although it doesn't have the benefits in wartime, money will have benefits in wartime indirectly soon enough. So that's one of the major reasons to conquer Rhodes. It's relatively safe being an island settlement that's a faction that will be dead once you finish conquering it. That's yet another reason to do it. And then the last reason, but perhaps one of the better reasons as well, is that the AOR recruitment units at Rhodes are actually all quite good. First of all, Rhodian slingers in the base game have returned. They're not the monsters they were base game. They're marginally better than like the Achaean slingers, the Acarnanian slingers, but they are better than any other slinger option I've seen so far. So that's definitely a solid thing worth thinking about. You also get access to the Rhodian hoplites, which aren't as good as the Alien ones, but are one of the better hoplites floating around, and definitely worth making if you're not interested in the slingers. And Rhodian epibates, while not being a particularly impressive epibates unit in and of itself, because they are a sword-based unit, they get a pretty substantial bonus to their stats when fighting spear-based units, like most of the Greek world. So there is reason to care about this guy as well, even though he's a relatively run-of-the-mill epibates if your roster has no real alternative to them. And the main reason I mentioned the hoplites and the epibates as opposed to just the slingers is coming down the Crete. Like if you're sailing the Mediterranean conquering things for units, you're right next door, and let's be honest with ourselves, Cretan slingers are nothing to be impressed by. They're fine. They're nothing interesting. But coming over to tier 3 with the 3rd tier range, you unlock Cretan archers, which are far and away the best ranged unit I have seen so far. Have I played any ranged unit heavy factions? No, I've been playing the Greeks, of course not. But these are literally 3 levy archers stapled together in terms of their stats in the current version. I believe all the range units are getting slight buffs, so while this does make the Cretan archer itself a little bit better, the comparison to other archers will get a little bit worse. Instead of being 3 times 3 is 9, you would see 4 times 3 is 12 compared to 10 on this or whatever. But it's still going to be an incredible unit in the next patch, even a little bit better than it currently is. So Cretan archers on Crete are a big deal, and there are a lot of settlements on Crete now. Taking a look at this, you can see just how quickly you can recruit Cretan archers if you really wanted to. So to recap the regional stuff, at tier 3 recruiting 4 stables, you get the Salian Lancers here. At tier 3 recruiting tier 3 infantry, you get the Alien hoplites here. And both of those are very elite units that might actually be worth the time. The stuff over here, the slingers, the Acarnanian slingers, and even the Aetolian slingers, they're less impressive, but they're also available at tier 1 recruiting with the tier 1 range. They're very easy to get to, unlike the much more impressive tier 3 Cretan archers that require both 3 in the practice range and recruiting center. And of course you have the hoplites, epibates, and slingers. Every roster will find something they want on Rhodes. It's virtually impossible that you get this to tier 3, and of the 3 options it gives you, none of them interest you. Although I imagine they don't all pop in at tier 3, do they? Wait a second, was that right? Rhodian slingers are tier 1, that's really appealing. So that's really solid. They're not just better than what you get out of the other places, you get them at the same tier. That's fairly surprising to me. Quick check, is that actually true, or do they need practice range too? Yeah, they're recruited at the exact same rank as all the other Greek slinger variants, just the best at it. And then as you rank this up further, you get access to their quite good hoplites, though not quite the best, and eventually to their epibates as well to counter all the enemy hoplites. And I think it's likely I've missed something. There's always gonna be something I didn't catch, either it slipped through or I just didn't quite get to that territory and didn't realize it was there. But I think that's the vast majority of it that will actually impact your planning in a normal campaign, because unless you're the Antigonads, you're not really thinking about going for Illyria or going for Thrace. And if you're thinking about going all the way up here because they have the best AOR units in the game, and I will show that in a second, I mean, that's not really related to who you're playing, you're just making a decision. Maybe you're making a decision to play the Bosphorans because that would just be the less roundabout way to do it, right? So the hype I'm giving to the Bosporan region with all of their units, you can see they have Scythian Cataphracts, Noble Cav, and lower tier variants of all of this stuff all the way down. And it's just, like, you know, you look at this and it's hard to justify not trying to get it. It's one of those things where this is just so strong that you're like, you know, we can make a quick stop at the Black Sea. It's not that far away. I mean, we'll have to conquer up through the strait. It's not a big deal. It's worth it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But the units up in this region really are ridiculous. If you want to make a quest to go somewhere, if you've already handled Greece and you feel stable here, and you already have roads and Crete, and you are like, let's go on a longer journey. I want to plant the seeds of something that'll be useful in the distant future, but not get into a major war. Then sending an army on a trek to colonize this region is not the craziest thing in the world. It sounds like a lot of fun. And now at the very end, I'm revealing my last bit of advice, something I've saved till the end so that anyone who wasn't paying attention and clicked off early wouldn't get my best piece of advice. See how dense all of this is? How many cities are just like right next to each other? Siege weaponry would be really good. Like, not that you have any siege weaponry. You don't get elephants if you're in Greece. I don't even know what building recruits siege weaponry, but I never got access to that shit. So like theoretically, eventually you would have siege weaponry, but you don't at the start. And that's a problem, because it would be incredible if you could. And in that IKEA save I was showing at the start, everything past this mountain range, all of Thessaly, all of this, that happened in 3 turns. Because the best piece of advice I can give anyone who's playing in Greece is to find the time to get a boat, put a family member on that boat, and ship him down to Carthage. Hadrumetum has elephants. What I personally did is I dropped the family member off, walked him in, stood him in this tree here, and then every turn I would just walk through like the corners of these settlements to see, hey, you have elephants yet? And the moment they did, I bought the elephants, got back on the boat, and shipped them back home. Elephants are insanely powerful with this density of cities. The first turn, they conquered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 settlements, I think. I cannot overstate how powerful it is and how worth the investment it is to send someone to buy elephants. It's to the point where if you don't have elephants, getting them is the best thing you can do. If you do have elephants, you should consider just going to Greece right now instead of wherever the fuck you spawned at. Like if you're Carthage, go invade Greece, make it work, figure it out. And if you don't have either, like if you're playing in a Syracuse, consider getting on the offensive, invading Carthage, and as soon as you get the elephants, invading Greece with them. Because it is so strong. I cannot overstate the value of elephants with cities this dense. And with my final pro tip for the episode, thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. And I'm sure I've missed things. I will be paying attention to the comments, engaging with you down there, and putting up a pinned comment that I will edit to include every bit of like concise and meaningful advice anyone else offers. Because I want this to be genuinely helpful to people, and I hope it was. And again, thank you for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, Jeffrey and Evan B, and I'll see all of you in the next one.